Stop! If you're planning to buy the Redmi Note 15, this video might save you 4,000 rupees. Now right here, I have two phones, the Redmi Note 15 and the Poco M8. On paper, they are almost identical. Same display, same battery, same charging speeds, and yet the price difference is big. The Redmi Note 15 starts at 22,999 rupees, while the Poco M8 starts at 18,999 rupees, even if that base variant comes with 6GB RAM. So the obvious question is, are you paying extra just for the Redmi name, or is there actually a real world difference? Hello everyone, I'm Ania for Digit, and this is our Digit style battery drain test comparison between the Redmi Note 15 and the Poco M8. Let's get started. First up, the key specs of both phones on your screens side by side. And as I mentioned at the start, these are almost identical phones in terms of specs, apart from their camera specs. While the Poco M8 features a 50 megapixel dual rear cameras, the Redmi Note 15 features a higher res 108 megapixel dual camera setup paired with an 8 megapixel ultra wide lens. So as always, we start by booting up both devices, and the Poco M8 powers on just a touch faster than the Redmi Note 15. Both phones are connected to the same Wi-Fi network and fully charged. The display resolution and refresh rate are set at auto. Brightness has been calibrated to 500 nits using a lux meter, and audio levels are fixed at 50%. Alright, starting with the 2-hour YouTube video playback, I locked both phones at 500 nits, and at this level, the Redmi Note 15 looks a touch brighter and slightly more vibrant than the Poco M8, especially in colorful scenes, which makes videos feel more pleasing to watch. Switch to auto brightness though, and the tables turn. In our testing, the Poco M8 hit around 2100 nits versus about 1670 nits on the Redmi, and outdoors you can clearly see the Poco looking a little brighter and more legible. That said, at roughly 1700 nits, the Redmi's panel is still solid and doesn't feel inadequate. Both phones use proper curved displays and look gorgeous while watching videos, but touch sensitivity around the edges isn't great, with occasional missed touches when scrubbing or skipping. So aesthetics are bang on, no doubt, but a flat or even those quad curve panels that you see would have made more practical sense overall. With that, we are done with the 2-hour YouTube video playback round, and for what it's worth, the Poco M8 is leading with 89% battery left, with the Redmi Note 15 right behind at 88%. Next up is video recording, split between the rear and front cameras, and this is easily one of the fastest ways to drain a phone's battery. We start with the rear cameras, recording 4K videos at 30 FPS for around half an hour. While the recording is running, here's what you're working with. The Redmi Note 15 comes with a 108 megapixel dual rear camera setup paired with a 20 megapixel front camera. It supports up to 4K 30 FPS video from the rear and 1080p 30 FPS videos from the front. The Poco M8 meanwhile uses a 50 megapixel plus 2MP dual rear setup, also paired with a 20 megapixel selfie camera with identical video limits, so 4K 30 FPS from the rear and 1080p 30 FPS from the front. On paper, the recording specs look similar, but the battery impact and more importantly thermals is where things start getting interesting. Wrapping up the 30-minute 4K video recording test using the rear cameras, the Redmi Note 15 peaked at around 38 to 39 degrees Celsius, while the Poco M8 stayed noticeably cooler, topping out at about 34 to 35 degrees. That's a clear difference in heat management, and during sustained camera use, the Poco M8 definitely feels more comfortable in hand and better controlled overall. Okay, let's begin the 30-minute 1080p video recording test using the front cameras, and while that's running, here are some photo samples captured on both smartphones. With that, we have completed a full hour of video recording, checking thermals once again, and both phones peaked at around 33 to 34 degrees Celsius. And after 3 hours of testing, the Poco M8 is still in the lead with 79% battery remaining, while the Redmi Note 15 follows closely behind at 77%. Alright, time to run some benchmarks and see what happens when both phones are pushed hard. This should give us a clear idea of not just say raw performance, but also endurance under sustained load. First, a quick look at the specs. Now, both the Redmi Note 15 and the Poco M8 are powered by the Snapdragon 6 Gen 3 chip, paired with up to 8GB LPDDR4X RAM and 256GB of UFS 2.2 storage. On paper, they are evenly matched, which makes this stress test even more interesting. Starting with Geekbench 6 and going purely by the numbers, there's barely anything separating these two phones. The Redmi Note 15 is ahead by roughly 0.1% in both single-core and multi-core performance over the Poco M8. In real-world terms, that's effectively a tie and not something you would ever notice in daily use. What this also tells us is that performance isn't the deciding factor here, and that makes the next set of stress tests far more important. Now in Antutu, the gap between the two phones is extremely narrow. The Poco M8 edges ahead overall by roughly 0.3%, which is a difference you'll never notice outside a benchmark chart. The more interesting split is in the details. The Redmi Note 15 is ahead in CPU performance by about 1.3%, while the Poco M8 counters with a small GPU lead of around 0.8%. So depending on the workload, each phone pulls ahead slightly, but overall performance remains very evenly matched between the two. In the 3D Mark stress test, the difference is once again minimal. The Poco M8 holds a tiny edge of around 0.1% overall, with slightly better stability at about 99.5% versus 99.3% on the Redmi Note 15. Frame rates are largely the same, peaking at around 25 FPS on both, though the Poco stays a touch higher at the lower end. It is a very close run, but the Poco looks a tiny bit more consistent under sustained GPU load. Here's a quick recap of the scores from the benchmarks round. You can pause and take a look. A quick check at the battery stats after 4 hours, and the Poco M8 is still in the lead with 64% battery, while the Redmi Note 15 is left with 61% battery. Now when it comes to gaming, the benchmarks already tell us that performance between these two is extremely close, and that plays out in a real-world use as well. Titles like BGMI, COD Mobile and Asphalt's Legends run smoothly on both the Redmi Note 15 and the Poco M8, with almost stable frame rates and no major stutters during casual gameplay. That said, these aren't proper gaming phones, and you do feel that once you start pushing them beyond their limits. So graphics settings need to be kept realistic, and you shouldn't expect flagship level performance here. The good news is thermals remain mostly in check, with both phones topping out at around 38 degrees Celsius, so they never get uncomfortably hot. For casual gamers, both phones do the job just fine, but if gaming is your top priority, you may want to look elsewhere. And with that, we have wrapped up the gaming round as well. At this stage, the Poco M8 continues to hold its lead with 55% battery remaining, while the Redmi Note 15 is down to 52%. We are now entering the final stretch of our battery drain test. Up next, I'll be running an hour of Instagram on both phones, but instead of keeping you waiting till the very end, let's fast forward straight to the 6-hour mark. By this point, the Poco M8 finishes with 45% battery left, while the Redmi Note 15 wraps up with 44%. Here's a look at the hour-by-hour battery drain comparison for both phones on your screens right now. So after 6 hours of identical usage, the answer is pretty clear. In terms of battery life, performance, thermals and day-to-day behavior, there's barely anything separating the Redmi Note 15 and the Poco M8. Across video playback, recording, benchmarks, gaming and social media, the Poco M8 consistently stayed a step ahead, but the margins were always very small. Where the real separation comes is in the camera setup. The Redmi Note 15's 108 megapixel main camera and added ultra-wide lens gives it more versatility, and that's where the extra money actually goes. If camera quality matters to you, the Redmi Note 15 does justify its price to an extent, but if you're looking at overall performance and battery life per rupee, the Poco M8 makes a very strong case, even if it starts with just 6GB RAM as in the base variant. So no, the Poco M8 isn't just a Redmi in disguise, but for most users, it might just be the smarter buy. And that's it for this battery in comparison between the Redmi Note 15 and the Poco M8. Let me know your thoughts about these phones in the comments below, and as always, I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you for watching.